Howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dads on Life, your weekly episodic show on parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host, Jay Miles, and with me, as always, are my co-host, Keith Bogan,
Greetings from Columbus, Ohio.
Chad Holloway,
Buenos dias from Atlanta, Georgia.
Doug Hemendike,
Well, if we're doing cities, it's good morning from Bath, PA.
and Dave Dusemurray.
Reporting live from an undisclosed place in New Jersey.
Hey, Dave's in the witness protection program, apparently.
Yeah, nobody can pick me out of a lineup.
We welcome Doug back, and it's first time. Well, five of us have been here in quite a while. So we're going to, Keith, you're going to introduce this one. You can't kind of came up with this, so floor is yours.
I have to say that in a way, it wasn't me who came up with it. It was my son, although both of them have taken turns doing this to me. For me, the topic is, how do you handle it as a father when your sons or daughters just don't respond to you? When you're having a conversation with them and you know they're hearing you and they know that you know they're even agreeing or understanding, but there's just no response. And I have to give you the example. Let's put this up on the screen here. You see all the green, and you see this is me talking to Jeremy. Just talking to Jeremy, and this is over a couple of different days, and finally he responds with something. And it's stuff where I'm saying, like, maybe we should do this. Would you like to do that? And there's just no response. But I know him so well that I know what the responses are. But I'd like him to communicate, like, a freaking human being, for crying out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I have to say, in all disclosure, this is great. The reason I'm in Columbus, like I frequently am, is to go to see him perform at in the marching band in Ohio State University. And this same kid who completely ignored me for the most part, well, before I got here, has been very attentive while I've been here. And in fact, last night shocked me. After the game, they have a tradition where they go to a eye dotting party, as they call it. There's a thing with the Ohio State marching band where they draw out something called Script Ohio when they perform on the field. They literally draw out the name Ohio with all the band members, and then one of the band members dots the I.
Right.
After the game, there's an eye dotting party where the band gets together. I wasn't invited to that, but the pre-gaming that they did, he actually brought me with him to hang out with his friends. So it's not like he's ignoring me. That was like a great honor to go and be at one of those parties,
That's cool.
The old man hanging out with the kids. And we had a great time. So there's absolutely nothing wrong. We're getting along fine, but then there are these times where he just goes silent. And on my phone, I can see, it says read. I know he read the messages. Help me, boys, help me.
Yeah. So I can kind of relate with this. And this seems to be more of a function of, especially as kids get older and they start to get to the point where they are embracing more of their own independent lives. I see this much more from my daughter than I do from my sons, even though I can totally see it. That your description of a conversation is going to be my life with my older son, Jay, when he goes to college. I am going to have conversations with him that are going to go a month or two. And, once in a while, I may get an okay back. I could totally see this happening, right? Totally. And I think it's because, I don't know why, right? So the only thing I can think is, I know for my daughter, she gets wrapped up in her stuff that she's doing. She moved out last year. She's trying to figure her way out through life and everything like that. And she gets distracted and works on things. And I found that she'll get back to me if she needs something. That's usually a very, very effective way of actually hearing from my daughter. Or on occasion, if I tell her, we're trying to plan something for the family, I need you to touch base with me on things. If it involves people other than if it's just me shooting the stuff, it may be a bit before I hear back. But if I'm saying, listen, it involves your brothers or it involves the family, or if it's something that she needs, that will usually prompt a faster response from my daughter, at least. I could see my older son when he goes to college, he's just going to be way too distracted with everything going on that he's just going to forget this stuff. And I'll hear from him like once a month. But yeah, no, I see it. When the kids are younger, it's when they're in the house all the time, and I can talk to them and they can talk to me, it's a lot easier to maintain that. And I'm very big on direct communication. It's a huge thing with me and my kids.
Mhm.
But you know, I've seen with them as they get older and they go out, they just get distracted with the larger world around them, and they want to kind of dig into that stuff that's outside of this house. And for the most part, I can't blame them. Like I always encourage them, like, go see what's going on out there, and that sometimes means that they forget I exist for a little while. At least that's
A little
my
while?
a
Oh.
little while. I'm easily forgotten. So that's my impression, or my perception of what I see. I'm not quite where the point you are, Keith, because I know both of your boys are older and both of them are out. I still got a couple that are home for the most part. So it'll be interesting to see if what I see with my daughter grows with both of my sons as they go out into the world.
But wait, no, being home may not be the key, because Justin is now back home. You know, he was obviously gone for 5 years while he did his schoolwork down in South Carolina. And now that he's back home, he works from home almost exclusively. And I work from home most of the time. But especially if I'm in the city and he's at home and I send him a text, it's just freaking crickets. And it's not that he's ignoring it. Like I said, he's reading it, and their mindset is, well, you know the answer. Like I'm some divine intervention or something like that.
Yeah.
And I guess my experience with Frankie is that in high school, he was usually pretty responsive, but we kind of pushed him on that, like, hey, if I send you something, you need to let me know. You need to get back with me. But once he went to college, you know, and we kind of had a discussion about this. I said, you know, you're on your own. I said, I want to be here to support you, but I said, you're the man now. I said, so you have to be responsible for yourself and these kinds of things. But I said, but I'm here to help you and to support you and to help you through whatever, right? So in high school, it was lots of good response times. In college, man, I went for just like about 4 years without hearing from the kid. I mean, every once in a while, like, I might get a call on Christmas or my birthday, and we would text every once in a while. But I would do the same thing, but instead of mine saying read, it would still say unread, because he's got his read and unread on, right?
Yeah.
So I would just go for a month with it just being unread. But I will say that now, I think he knew that if it was something that was an emergency, that I would call him. But now what I see is, since he's got his own job, so he'll call me every night after he's coming home from work, which I love it. So I know it's going to be short lived, but you know, he'll talk to me for a half hour every day, and I'm eating that up. And you know, he'll tell me how work went, and you know, about some of the calls he had, about some of the things that he learned that day, about things that are going on, about, you know, different things. So it's you know, that part of it I've been loving. So, you know, like one of his most recent things is he went to get his license in Arizona. So he went and he took the eye test, and then the lady like gave him the eye test, but then was asking him something else, and then said, "What was the last letter you said? Was that a C or a G?" And he goes, "I don't remember." He says, "Can I look?" And she goes, "No, you can't look." And so he goes, "C." He goes, I don't remember." He goes, "I think it was a C." And then so she put down C. So now somehow that made it so he cannot drive at night on his license. So he got it. So he got his license. He goes, "Dad, can you believe this?" I go, I can. I go, and when you told me the story about the lady saying that, I could see something going on there, because they need to listen to you as you're reading it. You know, they can't ask you 5 minutes later what you said. But he's resolving that, and that's kind of the latest issue he's had. It's just, you know, typical.
That's stupid.
Yeah, it is stupid. So now he has to go get a a doctor's basically a doctor's excuse saying that he can, or a letter from a doctor saying that he can drive at night. So he's like, that's going to cost me. He goes, but he said, I could tell the lady when I was at the DMV was upset. She knew what I was going through. She didn't like it either, but she said that's just how it's resolved. So, but so yeah, so anyway, like now I'd say we talk a lot actually, which I prefer over the texting.
Yeah.
But I know it's short lived, Ian, because once he gets a girlfriend or starts doing some other things, then it's gonna be more his life. But that's kind of how it is, you know.
Mhm.
Now, is this in Illinois? Was that in Illinois or Arizona?
That's in Arizona.
There's a, if I'm being completely honest here, that's probably a fail safe because of the large contingent, and it's not a reflection on him. It's more reflection on the large contingency of retirement community that has moved out there over the last 15 years.
Yeah, it could be.
People were not just retiring and moving to Florida; they're moving to North Carolina and moving to Arizona. So it may have a little bit more stupid, especially with a 20-something-year-old kid, but not, ridiculous.
Well,
Yep.
if you're right, Jason, that gives me actually hope that somebody out there is concerned about aging drivers and their
One
ability.
can hope.
Well, I mean, I thought we lived in a society where it didn't matter what you were, you didn't get retested, you didn't get checked. You got your license when you were 17, and when you were 97, they didn't, nobody rechecked you. So that was pretty good, Dave. How did you get your voice that high?
Divine intervention on a Sunday morning with not enough coffee. It's the only
What
logical
the fuck did
explanation.
you say?
Freedom!
Oh,
I'm just here to provide color commentary.
So Doug, this is your future, man. It's coming. It's coming fast.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No,
Well, I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say it's coming like a train, gonna run you over.
Yeah, I know. I got my oldest one more year with Brendan. And yeah, it's like one of those things where it's you communicate the best you can with them. And I just realized the other week that I actually didn't even have Colin's phone number for texting him, because my wife was like, well, just text him. And I'm like, I don't have his number. So yeah, we do a lot of face to face, but it's a little bit easier, because they live in the house, they depend on us for everything. When we're communicating with them, well, especially if I'm communicating with them, and I'm not getting through, that's when I tag in my partner, Heather, and say, hey, I'm talking to them and it's just not coming through, and explain the situation. And a couple times, either if it's something that needs to be discussed in a wider range, she'll pull me in like immediately. So say, hey, come on up here, for bigger things. But for the little day-to-day stuff, they're still I like to call them kids. And we get to be able to be part of their lives and stuff. I mean, we are at the point where they do like to spend a lot of time in their rooms. And it's like one of those things where it's like it's dinner time, and I just call up the stairs, hey, it's dinner time, get on down here, guys, and I've been getting less of a response, let's say, and they got their headphones on or music or whatever. And usually I go upstairs and you know, and I'll knock on their doors and say, hey, man, it's dinner time, type stuff, and make some corny dad jokes and stuff. And it turns out that I said the other day, hey, Heather, can you call the kids? And it's like 5 minutes later, I'm like, I'm ready to eat. And she's like, yeah, 1 second. And here they come. And I was like, she's like, oh, I just texted them, and I'm like, oh, wow. All right. But sometimes I do get frustrated, and I'm like, they're not listening or whatever over just like minor stuff or whatever. And Heather will throw at me, well, when you were a kid, what were you doing?
oh boy.
And I'm like, but the point is to me is that it's like I don't want them to
But the point
be
is,
I don't want them to be like what I was doing whenever I want a response. Like,
well, you can wish in one hand and shit in the other.
Yep.
Guess what's gonna fill it first?
So
I
And
want
it's funny you
I
said
want
food.
I want them to respond. I want them to respond to me like my dad wanted me to respond to him, not like how I actually did it.
Yeah.
It's funny you said food because Justin is just as bad as Jeremy, and we're in the same house. You know, we converted one of the bedrooms upstairs to an office so he could have his privacy for his job. And so he disappears into that room 9 to 5 when he's, during the business day.
Mhm.
So he can be upstairs. And once in a while, I'll pop him. I know he's at work, but I also know he's reading it. And we'll go through that. There'll be a few different things, a couple which I might, looks like I need a response on. Nothing. And then during the middle of the day, I'll run to Wawa. We have a thing for chai latte. We both love this drink. It's our favorite drink on the planet. So I'll bring 2 back. I'll put it on my desk downstairs, and I'll take a picture of it and send it to him. He's downstairs in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I bring a bagel back from the bagel shop, take a picture of it, send it to him. Boom, he's right downstairs. So he's clearly reading everything I send him for sure. It's like we have the wives have always said selective hearing. Well, they have selective viewing of messages.
Yeah.
And selective hearing, because if you call them, they don't always answer.
For
See,
sure.
my house is a little different when it comes to dinner time because they know their father's appetite. So I will literally stand at the bottom of the stairs and call upstairs, and I will say 3 words. I will say, "Little people, food," and if they come down, they eat. If they don't come down, there's a good chance they won't. So we go on the Darwin method of dinner time meal availability here. If you get down here, you'll get it. If you don't, there's a good chance I will have eaten everything. And I leave it up to them. And there are times like it's funny because as they get older, and to Doug's point, my kids get distracted all the time. My youngest used to be very, very responsive. He has become quite the gaming connoisseur, and has kind of enveloped himself into that world, and the headphones that come with it, including the noise canceling headphones that come with it, where sometimes his response is a little bit delayed. So there are times it's only recently have I had to call for dinner more than once. Usually it's a one-time thing. We do it, and then sometimes I'll have to have one boy sit together. Hey, send your brother a reminder that there's stuff going on down here. He might want to get down here at some point. They just get distracted with what they got going on. My older son with his music and his chatting, my younger son with his video games and his techie type stuff. They just get wrapped up in the world, and I can empathize with that because I was the same way when I was learning to play bass and figuring that out downstairs. I'd just sit in front of my stereo for hours trying to figure out how to play the damn thing. I forget everything, and sometimes that even included meals, as odd as that sounds.
Right.
But so I get it. As they get older, they just wrap themselves into whatever they got going on. And when they move out into the bigger world, they're just going to be loaded with stimuli from different environments that they don't get here. And they're just going to be like, oh my God, shiny things everywhere. And then, I'm the old comfortable, reliable, familiar guy. And it's like, oh, I'll get to him later. I need to learn this thing and that thing. And I could totally see that happening.
Yeah. So David, sounds like what you're saying is that if you want them to come down for a meal, unplug the internet.
Oh, I can do that right from here.
Wi-Fi. Well, now that you're here,
I can do that for their gaming consoles. I can actually turn off the Wi-Fi in my house right from here. One button, done.
Huh?
What it doesn't do is it doesn't turn off the 5G from their phones. So if they're on their phones, alas, my plans are thwarted.
Yeah.
But I can do some of it, and I have done that before.
That's in some ways they're still reliant. Like Justin and Jeremy are on my cell phone plan.
Yeah.
So if I could be the douche and say, listen, I'm paying for your freaking phone. If I text you and it's a question, freaking answer it or I'm going to turn it off. Or
Yeah.
Jeremy, when he comes home and he disappears into the basement, all he does is play video games with his online games with his friends. If I need you for something, I need you to respond, or I'll shut the internet. I don't want to be that guy. And, I don't think any of us want to be that guy. I would never ever threaten that sort of thing. By the way, that does lead us into the derivative, the sort of the ancillary topic of Jeremy is a big gamer. He's home 4 weeks a year total. Like his marching band responsibilities are so intense at Ohio State that he's hardly ever home.
Yeah.
We might see him for a combined total of 6 or 7 days during this coming holiday break. He doesn't come home at all for Thanksgiving. And of course, with drum corps, he was never home for the summers. He'll come home and he's got this circle of friends in the town we live in. And I'm like, I figure if you come home, you want to go see them. And he'll disappear into the basement and play video games. And he'll come back up for a quick meal and be like, don't you want to go see your friends? And his answer will be, I'm seeing them. What
I
are you
am.
talking about? Through the video console. I'm like, whatever happened to getting together like in person with your friends? That whole IRL thing,
We didn't
What?
have high-speed internet in our day. We couldn't do what he's doing now.
But it is, this is where I am definitely get off my lawn territory because that just, oh Lord. Oh,
But
man.
yeah, I mean, the online world and the online universe that's here contributes to the interactive distractions that my kids have, right? There's all kinds of things that they got going on that they suck themselves into the world. And then, here I am in the real world, be like, hey guys, just so you know, I'm here. How you doing? Blah, 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 blah. But, that's the world that they're choosing to spend their time in. It's funny you bring up the point, Keith, about the cell phone plans and things like that, not wanting to be that guy. I'm kind of the opposite in that I explicitly tell my kids, if you let me run your stuff, I will do so. If you don't want me to do things that you don't agree with, get your own plan. Or like, whether it was a cell phone with my daughter, we got her when she wanted to get a plan, I got her a plan, not under mine. We went to Verizon. She signed up for her own stuff. Like, if you want it, you pay for it. You will have unfettered access to whatever you got going on.
Mhm.
That's how we're going to work it. If you want me to pay for it, I will, but then I get control of it.
Right.
Same thing with her car. When she wanted a car, if you don't want me to take your keys away when you don't in some type of thing, get a car, get it registered, get it insured, put everything in your name. Then I can't touch it. My kids were, well, at least my daughter was very, very responsive to that. And I'm say the same thing to my sons. You want a car? If you don't want me to have any say over it into when it gets used and how and why, then you cover the cost for it. Simple. Great power, great responsibility argument.
You're a smarter guy than I, because Justin's car is in my name. The insurance is in my name. He pays for everything. He makes the car payments. He makes the insurance payments for his car. But it's all in my name. I still have the control, but I'm not paying for it. So, whereas the cell phone in my name, but I'm paying for it. So I could control that more. But again, neither one of us wants to be that guy. There's got to be different ways, but we all go through the same thing. It's not like our kids are unique in this regard. We all the generation is the same thing, and we did the same thing to our parents and all that.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's how we respond to it, and what techniques do we use to sort of get some attention. I mean, if I bought chai latte 4 times a day, I'd get everything I wanted.
Yeah.
And just send the pictures.
Yep.
So I could resist bribery. That would work. Why not?
It's funny. It's like my approach to that type of stuff of, if you want to have unfettered say, then you own it, it comes directly from my parents. It's exactly what my dad told me when I wanted to drive. He's like, you want to drive? Buy a car, insure it, register it. It's in your name. You cover the cost of it. You cover the repairs. It is yours. If you want to drive, you have to be responsible for everything that comes with it. That is directly from my parents. So I thought it was pretty good. So trying that out with our kids. And, modern generations always get mocked for, oh, well, I don't want to be responsible for my stuff, or, oh, I want to be taken care of and I'm soft and blah, 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 blah. I tell my kids, you don't want to, if you don't want to abide by that stereotype, then you have the power to choose that. That's up to you.
But
We'll see where it goes.
I was like thinking that like my way that I communicate with my kids, maybe I'm not so happy, but it seemed that like my mom was the one that did most of the communicating with both of me and my brother, as well as Heather is also the one that does all the emotional communications mostly and stuff like that. And we share parenting with uh other like correctional type things, but I mostly communicate a lot more with the boys with when it comes to directional things and teaching them how to do certain things like fixing things and laundry, and showed them how, like a little bit how to cook and stuff like that and all. So that's why I'm saying like directional type of things, so there's different types of things that Heather's clearly better at it, as well as there's different things that I do with like teaching and communicating, like let's say to the boys. And also like we were saying, I was like just like, well, I was just thinking more or less like like how I communicated with my parents, which Heather was pointed out at that age and stuff, and how we continue to communicate with other people around us, I guess, as part of this as well. And how we still communicate or don't communicate with our parents that are still with us. I think that might tie into this too, as well. you
Yeah,
know
I agree. I've said this to my kids, like the way I teach them is a direct line to the way I was taught.
Mhm.
For better or worse. And I tell all three of my kids, the way if you choose to go into this whole parenting thing, the way that you will teach your kids will be a direct reflection of the way that you were taught, by myself and by your mom.
Mhm.
That you have the power to choose what of that you like, that you want to teach to reinforce, and what that you didn't like that you want to teach to reject. You get to make that call. Um, I try to provide the best example I can, at least what works for me and what appeals to my general principles and values, things like that. And hope that it washes down on my kids, and communication is the biggest thing. And, like I said, coming back to the topic of today, communication is the biggest part, where,
Mhm.
avoid making assumptions and judgments and be more direct, open, and honest when you're talking. As I said, that's a skill that when my kids get out into the world, even if they don't do that with me, if they kind of blow me off for a few months, I want them to be able to do that either in the workplace or with people that they are in agreement with, or especially with people that they're in disagreement with.
Mhm.
Take that and use that, because you will get clearer, better answers if you're able to take that approach instead of just making assumptions and judgments and then dealing with the fallback from that. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that when we have those gaps in communication where they just don't respond to stuff, the only person who's kind of in the dark is me.
Mhm.
They still have all the information most of the time. Once in a while, especially Jeremy will miss something. He'll have
Yeah.
read everything, but it'll have gone in one ear and out the other. And then he'll miss having done something, and I'll say, it wasn't a text that you were not replying to. And he'll be like, oh yeah, that's a good point. You did tell me.
Yeah.
No real bad things have happened because of that. But those are the little lessons that I think eventually, by the time I'm 97 or so, they'll finally start responding. Because it helps them to understand that there might be some value to occasionally sending a quick text back,
So
or responding in the house a little bit faster.
when
But
you're 97, so next week.
exactly, well, actually it was last week, but they we're making progress. And my kids in that
No, you're
regard
not.
are different than the other kids, that's for sure. It's just me having to, chew nails, thinking about, oh, geez, I have to be patient until they figure this out.
Well, I think Keith, to your point too, like the attention to detail. Sometimes if they're not reading the messages, or if they just kind of read it very quickly because they're doing something else, they might miss those little details, like you were saying. And those are the details. So far nothing bad has happened, but in the future maybe it might be more meaningful or more significant. But yeah, I mean, and I think that's just part of life, because I mean, I would say that my experience with my parents has probably gone very similarly to how Frankie's has gone with me, but we didn't have the texting and all that kind of stuff. But still, like my mom was something one day. She goes, "I tried to call you every Sunday in school, but you'd only answer like one Sunday out of the month." Like, oh yeah. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I guess. And I look at like where I was.
There it is.
And that's where they are. And it might be a different world, but that's where they are as well.
There it
not-
is. You just hit the nail on the head. Thank you, Chad.
So
We-
not to be sexist about it,
Whether we want to admit it or not, all of our kids are, as I described of seeing something the other night. We are a product of our parents, and our kids, to an extent, whether we like it or not, are going to do the same, pretty much the same exact things that we did. Yeah. We are going to sit here. We are going to sit here and say, no, we did. And if we're being honest, we didn't. We're lying to ourselves. We're lying to each other. But we all know
the technology. The difference is the technology.
Right.
We're all the same as they were, or they are the same as we were, but now they have different tools to hide behind, if you will. And so it's a little easier actually for them to not respond, because
Right.
we used to not respond when our parents were in the same room with us. We would just sit there and read our book instead. So now they're, in another room or in another house, and they're looking at our messages, and they're doing the same thing we did. The point you made, Chad, about attention to detail, when it will really make a difference is when they go to work. Because they can afford to ignore us and miss a few details and whatever. But when their boss sends them something and they have miss a few details, they're going to pay the price on this.
Right.
We all go through that learning curve.
Doug actually, I think, brought up a good point earlier when he was saying, like, the way, we were talking about the way we were raised and how that reflects our parenting and the different roles that our mothers and fathers played in our development. And the theme on our show is parenting from a male perspective, right? So if I look at the way that my father approached parenting of me when I was younger, my dad was much more he was a military guy, more the logic and reasoning side, horrible jokes, right? So those are obviously all skills that I am lovingly passing down to my kids, especially the horrible jokes part, and I guess, when I look at parenting from a male perspective for my kids, my perspective now is, there's a good amount of my dad there, but I think, especially being in a situation where I'm not in a two birth parent household, haven't been with either of with any of my kids. I've had to kind of like I haven't had a female co-part in the same house to take on the traditional female roles of the way that I was raised. So I tend to, I think, incorporate some of my mom's personality and the things that she taught me into the way that I teach my kids, to kind of give them a blended male female influence when I'm giving my male perspective now to my kids. I at least in my opinion, I think it's working. They seem to be decent kids and they're not horrible people yet. Hopefully it stays that way. But teaching communication, I think, from a male perspective, is my dad was he was pretty corny, but he was much more direct with his communication, right? I think it comes from his military background. And I got that. I took it in, and now I've gotten to the point where that's a key part of my personality, and I'm passing that down to my kids. And taking into account the distractions that they have going on through the day. Like for me, like I said, it was playing music or listening to bands or being on my bike and hanging out with my friends and being out of the house till all hours. Now it's video games and and online chatters and different group things and whatnot. Or in the case of my older son, listening to actual records for hours on end and diagnosing and examining every single little key part of whatever song he's listening to.
Mhm.
You know, but parenting from a male perspective, and what I hope to get out of it is that they take those skills and they use them moving forward. Whether hopefully it's with me, that'd be great. But really, the ultimate goal for me is to pass them down so they use them on the wider world moving forward outside of my house.
Very
Yeah,
different.
exactly. And Dave, I think I had a similar upbringing to you as well. With my stepdad was very kind of reasonable, rational, to the point, direct communicator, and like we would talk about things, and he would always like play it forward, like, okay, so if this happens, then what could be some outcomes, so like there was a scenario out, so it really helped me to be analytical as well and logical, and I think that kept me out of, well, I won't say it kept me out of trouble, but it helped me to get myself out of trouble on several occasions.
Yeah.
But and I tried to do the same thing with Frankie as well. Is I would explain to him things very rationally and reasonably, and just hopefully he picks some of that up as well, because I think that's a good way to approach life.
Yeah.
And if you do right, good,
Keith, can't hear you. You're muted, bud.
Keith.
I said, thank you. I was going to thank Doug for that interlude because it reminded me that sometimes the cat listens more than my sons do. Yeah.
We apologize for the nudity, the on camera nudity there for the moment. Murphy's Law. So yeah, like I said, we can push in directions. The one thing is, obviously, we can't push too hard, because if you push too hard, you can clearly just lose them all together. And that's not something any of us want to do.
Not to be sexist about it, but Jason, I just wonder, I'm looking forward to the next few years and watching your experience, because obviously you have daughters and not sons. And for the most part, this group has a preponderance of sons here. Obviously, Chad and Dave have one daughter each. But the stereotype is that the girls get to be much more difficult in their teenage years, which conveniently you are now entering. Congratulations on that, and good luck. And Dave is like, I know.
Teenage girls are their own special challenge. That's for sure.
So I am because we get to spend a lot of time together. I'm really looking forward to watching, without being the parent, but watching you and see how you go through those challenges. That should be very interesting. Chad, remind me, your daughter is now how old?
Stepdaughter.
She just turned 13 in October.
So you're right there too.
So yeah, but I tell you, I think when she first moved here, we had some issues, but now like gets good grades and she's making good decisions, and I can't complain at all about anything.
Yeah.
Everything's real good with her, and I'm trying to think. I don't know that I text her that often. I think her mom does probably a little more, but she's kind of a homebody, so she's usually here. But I'll send her like a funny TikTok or something like that, which she'll laugh, within usually 12 hours, she'll send something back laughing or whatever.
Within 12 hours. I like that.
Yeah. So but
progress.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I send it late at night too. So but so far so good with her. But I do know from a previous relationship that it can be hell.
You've described that, and I remember early on we started doing this situation you had. Um, and obviously, I don't know how it resolved. I mean, I think we all kind of know exactly how it resolved, but uh, not going to get into sort of details on that one. But actually, you're talking about TikToks. Even that's most of the stuff that I get from the girls, and is mostly stupid things like that right now. I mean, there's been more communication recently, and obviously for obvious reasons. Um, um, with Delana, being on the late bus and this and that, there's a little bit more recently. Um, and getting them to and fro from places. Um, certainly, it's a challenge in and of itself to uh, just to get through a week, usually. But it's I don't want to say it's getting easier because it's not. It's insane how how far things are and how different things are of getting here and there on time and getting everything situated. And I'm actually looking forward to not having to do the end of the week like we usually do. Um, with Thanksgiving coming up this week. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge but it's something that I look forward to as time goes on. The changes that have been going on, which like I said, it is what it is at this point.
Well, it's interesting that the girls are rumored to be to sort of separate from parents and have their own thing as teenagers, but the boys are seem to go through that later, toward the time they finish high school or and maybe go to college or go off to
Sure.
whatever they can do. So again, it feels like traditionally you would be on the cusp of it, but maybe it's a matter of how boys and girls are parented. So maybe go through that because I know you have a very, very good relationship, very close relationship with your girls. And it'll be very interesting to see if that has an impact on whether or not they go through that rebellious phase, if you will.
Right.
I never felt like Justin and Jeremy went through rebellious per se, but in a quiet way, it's sort of like I can be independent if I don't answer dad for a week. And that's their version of rebellion as opposed to, getting in trouble or doing something stupid or whatever. So I'm perfectly happy with that. Even though it does drive me insane at the moment, it's certainly the easiest of the possibilities.
Oh yeah, rebellious times. Something I'm sure all of us have. Well, Jason soon. All of us have experienced in some way, shape, or form. I know with my daughter, I definitely saw some of that. Not as much with my sons, but it'll be interesting to see because obviously, I have a split arrangement with my sons, between their mother's house and my house. So I don't know how that factors into where they choose to express their rebellious side. Maybe the environment they're in as opposed to the parent that they're with is more conducive or not so much to kind of getting into that rebellious side that I believe all kids go through. I don't think there's a single exception. In some way, shape, or form, you have to be rebellious because that tests boundaries. And when you're
Right.
trying to establish your own, that's a key part of the process. So, on occasion, and it's funny, like in my house, that's why I promote open, direct communication as much as possible, and I try not to lash out in an emotional way when they're trying to challenge my boundaries. The first thing I do is I say, okay, well, sit down, walk me through it, and that kind of takes the fire because when you want to promote conflict, whether consciously or subconsciously, you need that fire back to kind of stoke that fire. And that's something I'm very conscious of. I don't do that, or at least I try not to. Um, and I've actually apologized to my sons where, like, if I jump off the deep end on something where I didn't take the time to learn about it at first. This actually came up with my son. His room was an absolute horror show. Absolute horror show. Like, worse than I'd ever seen it. And I flipped out about it. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, this is like, I trust you guys to take care of this. I don't check it all the time because I need to be able to trust you guys to take care of it. So when I check it and it looks like this, I get really pissed. What the F, you know? And I was like, setting unreasonable demands, like it needs to be completely clean by the end of the day today, and blah, 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 blah. And then I stopped and I was like, wait a minute. Are you okay? Because it was unusual to see his room in that sense. And I found out he's had a lot of stuff going on with school. He's been planning colleges. He's been working, like he just had his SAT recently. And there's a lot of things going on with him that I didn't take into account. And I actually stopped. I was like, listen, I flew off the handle. I'm sorry. That was wrong with me. Let's see what we could do to get stuff done. Let's work this out and things like that. Like, I'm not afraid to do that with my kids. Like, that I think is a key part of developing that open communication. I don't want to seem like a tyrant, like you're going to follow what I say just because I say it. That's more for other parents that I choose not to mention in this particular conversation. In order to promote open communication with my kids, you have to be able to do that give take and take accountability even when I'm wrong, because I'm wrong plenty of times. And I want my kids to know that if and when I am wrong, I'm willing to take ownership of it, apologize to them, treat them as humans on the hope that, something comes up and I get that back at some point. I think that skill, because my parents did that with me. I mean, it took going to a rehab facility for my brother before my dad would admit that he was wrong, but eventually he did. He came around. When he did, that was a powerful lesson for me that I took that I'm now working with my kids on. What do you guys think?
Yeah, what you're bringing up, this is like years of therapy, I'm sure, as could ever turn into. For me, the parenting experience I was exposed to was exactly the opposite. But the 30-second history is my father, and I've mentioned this on the show before, born in Germany as Hitler was coming to power, were Jewish. He and his brother and his parents and one cousin leave everything behind, run across Europe, just barely escape being caught by him. The rest of the family dies in the concentration camps. That's the background for the way he behaved, the way he parented. We've come to understand that what he was trying to do here was called hiding in plain sight. Yeah, and we're obviously experiencing some of this in today's world. The idea that if something like Hitler ever happened again, we should not be identifiable as Jews. And to that extent, he was very authoritarian. He would not explain. He would simply, this is my rule. This is what you're going to do. And you'd better do it. And he'd get really angry if we didn't. So I adopt a very different parenting style because that each of my brothers and I all rebelled against. It's not an effective parenting style. It doesn't have long-term prospects. So
Right.
I, like my brothers, I took a more nurturing approach. I took a more relationship-based approach. And it wasn't that my father was wrong. He had very valid reasons for doing what he did.
Right.
But it doesn't have long-term sustainability. So it helped me really shape. I took a couple of things from what he did. And then I knew that if I parented that way, my kids would never respond to me. And the way we never really responded to him. I remember hugging my father once in my life. I'm sure I did when I was a baby, but as you know, in memory, I only remember one time. So I hug my kids every time I see them, like literally every day. In fact, my kids are so trained to it. As I was leaving to come on this trip to Ohio, Justin's upstairs working in his office, and I text him upstairs saying, hey, listen, I'm on my way out. Take care of Keeper, and I'll see you next week, or see you on Sunday night, I should say. And he's downstairs in a heartbeat because The hug is the important thing. I didn't say anything. He knew I was going away for a couple of days, and he wanted to get that hug before I left. So I've really ingrained that in both of them. But the lessons came from the opposite of the way I was raised, as opposed to emulating most of that stuff.
Yep.
But you kind of said it. You said it doesn't have long-term prospects, but I understand. And I hope you take into account and realize that you're talking about a man who didn't know if he had long-term prospects to be alive. So
Absolutely, yes.
I can see
They didn't know
his
day to day if they were going to
point of
live, let alone eat.
Yep.
view. Right.
So I completely understand where it all came from. I completely understand the formation of it. And he didn't do anything that broke laws. Although today, I mean, he used to implore whatever the word is, corporal punishment, shall we say? Not with me, but with my brothers. And that probably wouldn't go over very well today. But other than that, he didn't do anything illegal. But he just had a very different parenting style that helped me build the style I have, which apparently has been reasonably successful with my kids. So, and the style that I have had has helped us navigate and survive the divorce that I went through as well, which was extreme, much more difficult on the kids than it was on us, my ex-wife and I. So take it for what it's worth.
I think, I had an upbringing kind of like Dave did as well. And, I try to incorporate that and, I'm open. I even have told Frankie, when he was younger, probably beginning about 17 or 18, if I made a mistake, I'm like, parenting, there's no manual for parenting. I go, it's hard. I go, you're going to encounter this yourself. I said, when you have kids, because your kids aren't all the same. Everybody's different. You're going to have different situations. So you just have to do the best you can and move on. And, and if you make a mistake, you just got to apologize for it and move on.
Yeah.
That was something my father did not do. He did not apologize for anything.
Yeah.
And I to that extent, I mean, that's the one I was raised in. I'm not very good at it either, but I've learned how to do it a little bit. I probably have ways to go, but
Yeah.
I recognize the deficiency in my own personality because of that.
Right.
And I try to cross that line and actually do that occasionally. It is absolutely one of the hardest things I've ever learned how to do because of
Right.
the role
And
model.
I think that plays key into the general topic of our show, right? So Dads on Life, parenting is a key part of it, but understanding what makes us a better people and a better parent to provide that to our kids, I think is a key part. As each generation goes through, we learn, hopefully, from the last one, either positive or negative, and pass it down to our kids. I think, it's funny, people bash on the younger generation, but I'm really excited about the world that my kids are going to be part in and generate. Is it scary? Fuck yeah. But, there are elements that my three kids have in their personality and the way that they think about themselves and others that are a hell of a lot better than the environment that I had when I was growing up. But I'm excited to see what they do with it. The goal is to just kind of keep growing through that stuff. I mean, look, Keith, with your parents, I mean, that's parenting from unbelievable trauma. I mean, that's just, I mean, like you, I totally understand and empathize. I mean, that must have been really tough to have that as kind of your foundational piece when you're trying to figure out what type of human you want to be. Like, that's hard. But I see the way you are with your boys and see how, you kind of been able to kind of grow on and beyond that, pass on kind of a better foundation for them. I think that's all we can do.
Well, it's interesting because I can also actively remember thinking back to when I was younger. Until I met the woman I would marry, I never thought I'd even have kids. And I think part of that was, well, I don't want them to exist in that kind of thing. So, and I didn't understand it could be different.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand it could be different until I could do it myself.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm like, I'm not gonna bother having kids. Why would I put them through the same thing? Because that's the only view I had. The only view you have typically is your parents.
Yeah.
But there were some other role models that I started to see, which was helpful. It took a while. I mean, I was early in my 30s before I felt like I could even consider doing it.
I say all the time on this show, usually for the negative part, is that there are some lessons learned easy and there are some lessons that are learned hard, right? So some lessons are learned easier, the ones that you take from others and apply to yourself. The ones that you learn hard are the ones that, maybe you hear, but you actually have to live through them before you get the impact of them, right? And, most of the time it's, the classic FAFO, before you learn what the impact of whatever you did was. But there are also times that it can be a positive thing where you believe that a negative is so hard until you actually do it. And you're like, oh, maybe there's a better way that I can do this,
Mhm.
As parents, I know I try to teach my kids easy as much as possible, but I fully acknowledge, and this is especially with my oldest, said it before, she needs to learn hard. It's just, I try to teach her easy and it just doesn't get through. And she acknowledges that about herself too, which is really good. Um, and I guess parenting and the whole deal, even with communication, they're going to come a point in time where, if you have horrible communication skills, there's going to come a point in time where you're going to need something and you reach out to somebody and they react the same way that you reacted to them, but not responding to them for months. And you're going to be like, WTF? And then you're going to be like, well, they're just giving me back what I gave them for months. And now you have to learn from that.
Mhm.
You know?
I think that's a pretty good place to leave us for today. Come back and revisit this later. Anybody have anything they want to add before we?
Call your parents today.
Yeah. I like it.
When I
Well-
heard somebody had presented, they said, how long do you think your parents will live? Right now, I've just got my mother left, right? And they said, how many years do you think that they're going to live? And how often do you think you're going to see them? And then add those up, right? So, it's like if my mom lives another 5 years, I'll probably see her another 6 or 7 times. It's pretty, but makes it pretty grim. Makes you realize that we're only here for a very short amount of time, and we need to take advantage of this communication with each other, whether it's by phone or visiting or whatever it is. But get out there and see our parents and our kids.
Yeah.
I've
As
got it.
somebody who's going into his first Thanksgiving season without both of their parents on this planet, I totally understand that.
I've got it ingrained in Justin and Jeremy's head. So my mother died 30 years ago. My father died 41 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I was not able to, it sounds a little weird, I was not able to give them grandparents from my side of the family. So I was always like, spend time with Poppy, spend time with Nana, and that would be her parents. And Poppy died about 2 years ago, although I hadn't seen him in several years for obvious reasons. And Nana freaking hates my guts. I mean, she and I were once very, very close, and they were both like my second chance of parents.
Yeah.
And they came along right after my mother died. So it was like I just lost the second of my parents. I got a fresh lease on life. I had these great, really close people that were parent roles to me. And then as time went on and the marriage sort of sunk into the shitter, she took her daughter's side. So she came to hate me. I mean, just loathe me. She would hiss at me like a cat whenever we were in the same room. It was horrendous. And yet my boys know, if you're home, you go see her. You go see her. And I'm pushing them. Did you see them? Did you see Nana? Did you go to her? Did you call her? And she's 85, I think, and she's in great shape for 85. But I'm like, you never know. You got one grandparent left. Get your ass over there. I don't care what she thinks of me. You get over there and do it as often as you can. She lives not far from you, Dave, in Hamilton.
Okay.
So, oh God, it's the undisclosed location. I just said it. I shouldn't have done that, Dave. Sorry.
Damn you!
Dumbass.
They're gonna come find me.
So much for witness protection. Shit. But anyway, yeah, so it's like she's right down the street. You go see her and you do it frequently. And the boys have really taken to that. And I don't know how it's received on the other end, whether or not they know that I'm the one pushing it really hard, but I don't care, you know.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that will wrap us up for this week. So from all of us here at Dads on Life, take care, everybody, and of course, Keith, eat my shorts.
Have a good one, guys.
See you guys.